New tonight on KGW News, the search for a missing dog spans from Arizona to Clark County. How a family finally got the call they'd been hoping for.
I lost it. I started crying. I'm like, wait, what?
Plus, the local businesses already feeling the impact as new tariffs go into effect.
We can't afford to not pass it on. We have low enough margins.
Then chaos in Northeast Portland when a car barrels down the sidewalk, then veers into oncoming traffic.
You could tell he wasn't backing off the accelerator at all.
But first, the multi-million-dollar settlement just approved by city leaders.
We have somebody who was killed because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Thanks for joining us. I'm David Mulco. Portland City Council unanimously agreeing to pay the family of Manny Clark $3.75 million after police say they mistook Clark for a robber and an officer shot him in the back during a traffic stop. Alma McCarty's been following the case closely and has our update. Alma?
Yeah, David, the family filed the lawsuit last year after a grand jury decided not to indict the officer, saying the use of force wasn't criminal. At City Hall this afternoon, several counselors expressed their anger at how police handled the situation.
I don't understand how shooting someone in the back while they run away could at all be considered in policy.
Strong words from Portland City councilors.
I'm disgusted by how this has happened, and it continues to happen, that no officers were found in needing discipline or training, that this officer was patted on the back and given an attaboy and sent back out to do his duty.
All 12 voted in favor of settling the wrongful death lawsuit with the family of Manny Clark.
After extensive mediation, the parties agreed to resolve the claims in the lawsuit for $3.75 million.
On November 19, 2022, an officer still employed by the Bureau shot Clark with an AR-15 rifle as he was running away. The 30-year-old died at the hospital days later. The lawsuit, filed in March 2024, claimed Portland police wrongly and unreasonably believed Clark to be the suspect in an armed robbery, and that after being shot, he was left bleeding on the ground.
It is absolutely chilling to me that it was 26 minutes after he was shot before assistance got to him.
That there were some unknowns and then there were some knowns. The knowns were that the people they should have been looking for were white men, and Manny was not.
Ahead of the vote, officials and attorneys fielded questions from counsel, and Chief Bob Day explained his decision not to discipline the officer for his actions.
The law says that the officers don't have to be right in the end, but they do have to act in a way that makes sense given what they reasonably believed at the time. There's no dispute that Mr. Clark's death is a tragedy, and frankly, it should anger us. It does me.
According to the lawsuit, both Clark and another one of the passengers in the car ran away during the traffic stop, and the officer who shot him had testified that he'd seen Clark reach into his pocket and was afraid he might try to pull a gun. However, Clark wasn't armed, and neither he nor any of his passengers had been involved in the robbery. David, back to you.
Well, thanks, Selma. Appreciate the follow-up on that tonight. Developing this evening, 4 people are in the hospital and 1 man is dead after a car drove onto the sidewalk in Northeast Portland and then kept going. This was on Northeast MLK near the Safeway just before noon. Police say the driver of a gray Ford Escape here was speeding when he veered off the road, hit 2 pedestrians, nearly hit a child, and drove back into traffic, sideswiping an SUV, crossing the median and hitting 2 more cars head on. Here is what one witness says she saw.
I pull up, I'm just looking and I'm starting to pray, and I see the cop come and cover his whole body. It was too much for me.
Authorities say they do not believe any of this was intentional, though they're still trying to figure out what went wrong. Investigators say the driver, who was hospitalized, has prosthetic legs and the vehicle had been modified, though it is unclear at this point if any of that contributed to this crash. All right, let's talk about wildfires now with some good news southeast to the Dalles, where evacuation levels have been downgraded after a small fire broke out this afternoon in a rural area near Highway 197. All level 3s and 2s you can see are now 1s in the green. Officials say the Steel Road fire, as it's been dubbed, has only burned 1/10 of an acre. That is great news. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Safina now with a closer look at the fire and the heat that's on the way. Matt?
Yeah, that's right, David. We got to look at the smoke from that fire from our sky cam out of the Dalles. You can see it blowing here and getting moved really rapidly because there are strong winds out there. Those winds are beginning to slow down. In case you're wondering what's moving around on the hillside there, closer look, it's cattle. It's cattle on the hillside. They weren't bothered by the smoke or that fire, which was great to see, right? In the Dalles right now, that's the moon, which is full tomorrow night, the full sturgeon moon of August. The winds are down, but they're still gusting to nearly 20 miles an hour. But we look at the wind forecast, and they drop way down below even 5 miles an hour in the early morning hours, and tomorrow won't be nearly as windy as today was. So if there's anything left, the wind shouldn't be too much of a problem, if a problem at all. But we've got the heat still on the way. For Sunday and Monday, we will be in the mid-90s both days. So we've got weather impact alert for both of those days. More on the heat in a bit. David, back to you.
Oh, here it comes. See you then, Matt. To new information tonight about a man Longview police say is armed and dangerous and wanted for stabbing 2 people. 51-year-old Alexander Rogers is accused of killing 64-year-old Dawn Peters and critically injuring one of her family members, Andrew Peters. This was Tuesday night at this home in Longview. Authorities say Rogers could still be in the area, likely driving this black spray-painted BMW with Washington plates starting with BNU. Officers last saw him earlier that day, again Tuesday, during a traffic stop near the Longview Fred Meyer. They add Rogers recently got out of prison for attacking people with a machete in a neighboring county.
He was arrested and ultimately served 20 plus years in prison. So he has not been out long from that. So, and that's why I say it's really important for us that the public knows this guy is dangerous. He's shown a propensity for violence.
Rogers has a nationwide warrant out for his arrest. Anyone who spots him should immediately call 911. To get you caught up on tonight's other headlines now, in Happy Valley, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is cracking down on what it calls illegal towing operations. Deputies recently arrested 3 people accused of running unlicensed towing companies. They also impounded 2 tow trucks and referred 5 operators for enforcement action. Officials say these predatory businesses violate state law, undercut legitimate companies, and put consumers at risk. 2 women are now facing first-degree theft charges after they allegedly stole from multiple shops along the I-5 corridor. Authorities say this surveillance video shows 30-year-old Flavia Avram and 29-year-old Ariana Montine stealing a $3,400 coin from a coin shop in Southeast Portland in early June. Investigators say the 2 apparently did the same thing at other shops. So if you spot the pair, you're asked to call 911. And Providence has announced it is laying off another 128 employees as it looks to cut $100 million in costs. Providence cut some 300 positions in Oregon and Western Washington in June. And the CEO in Oregon says more layoffs will come later this year. Now, for context, Providence, Oregon reported an operating loss of $250 million in Q1 of this year. In a statement, the CEO blaming in part cuts to safety net programs and President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Well, one of Oregon's largest employers, Intel, is now in the president's crosshairs. In a post today on Truth Social, President Trump calling for its CEO to step down, he said, because of business ties with China. This is just the latest blow to the company as it plans to lay off more than 2,300 Oregon employees. CEO Lip-Bu Tan took the top job in March. A longtime Intel researcher telling KGW that Tan's ties with China come from his involvement with a venture capitalist firm he founded decades ago, a firm that's been widely known about for years. Intel responding that it's, quote, deeply committed to advancing U.S. national and economic security interests, end quote. Tan is trying to guide the company through significant cost-cutting measures.
The hope that those changes and pain that Intel has to take right now are going to lead to better things down the road. You know, if Lip-Bu is going to be under the gun now I don't know. I don't know what the future strategy necessarily looks like.
Intel shares closed down today well over 3%. You know what, speaking of business and the White House, with some of the President Trump's new tariffs, some small and some not so small now in effect, we decided to circle back to local business owners, some of who'd already been hurting, to see what this means for them. Evan Watson has that update.
Don Seymour owns Fiber Rhythm, a yarn and craft store in Southeast Portland. A knitting machine like this one is a big ticket item.
in the second quarter, we sold as many as we sold all of last year.
Great news, until that bubble burst. Tariff-related price increases kicked in, and costs rose 37%, adding hundreds of dollars to a machine's price tag.
So we'll probably, for the rest of the year, have pretty close to zero sales on knitting machines.
It's a clear example of tariff impacts. Seymour says consumers changed their behavior, buying early. Now that overseas suppliers have raised their prices to account for tariffs, and shop owners like Seymour have followed suit, customers are largely cutting back.
So if you looked at like average order value and the number of people in your conversion as people are coming into the store, those numbers have all gone down.
In April, KGW talked with 3 Portland business owners about the Trump administration's proposed tariffs, tax increases on imported goods that Trump argues will reduce budget deficits and generate new wealth and domestic manufacturing. For many industries reliant on toys and other items made abroad, tariffs simply mean higher prices.
We absorb what we can, but as a small business, we have lower margins, lower room for error, and we just have to pass on some things.
John Weber is a seismic retrofitter who mostly uses domestic steel and wood. He said he would be less affected.
But I feel like we are in a pretty good position to ride this out.
Months later, Weber reports that's mostly true. Prices stayed generally steady, but business has been slow. He attributes that to apprehension over tariffs and interest rates. At Fiber Rhythm, the cost for yarn, imported from around the globe, has risen between 10 and 20%.
We can't afford to not pass it on. We have low enough margins.
With higher prices across the board, Seymour says she knows her store won't be considered essential.
I feel like it's just another tax on consumers, but without saying it's a tax on consumers.
Already some customers are asking about less expensive alternatives.
As it gets longer and longer and they're having to pay more and more for other things, they're going to spend less here. That's what I think.
What does that mean for someone like you?
That means I dig into my own savings to pay the rent by the end of the year. That's what that means.
Evan Watson, KGW News.
New at 11, neighbors in Northwest Portland rally tonight to stop the city from removing barriers they say are making their streets safer. These traffic diverters are at a couple of intersections, including Northwest 20th and Everett. PBOT says they were asked to design other options to give police better access. But bike advocates and those living nearby say removing these diverters would do more harm than good.
These barriers are super important for safety, especially for neighbors who go to and from Fred Meyer. Having a little bit of extra protection on Everett, which, as you can see behind me, is quite a busy street, any little bit helps, especially some of our older neighbors who can't cross the street quite so quickly.
Well, PBOT says it has added an all-way stop at that intersection to help address those safety concerns.